Growing up, I didn't have regular access to a computer. My family did have one, but it was mostly used for work and other things they needed to do. And being a small child, I never exactly had money to spend. So I was stuck using an iPad, which by all means is not terrible, but obviously didn't stack up to the power of a computer. Due to this, I was stuck with whatever games were available in the 2013 App Store. Games like Minecraft, Temple Run, the million versions of Angry Birds, and a recently released mobile port of a game called Terraria. More likely than not, you've heard of Terraria. Whether it's due to someone praising the game or claiming that it's just 2D Minecraft, you've probably heard of it. I mean, how could you not? It sold over 44 million copies across its lifetime, it's one of the only games to have a million positive reviews on Steam, and it's one of the most famous survival games of all time, and all of that success is deserved. If I'm going to tell you about the game, I'll have to give you an account on the game's history. It's January of 2011, and Andrew Spinks, under the name ReLogic, decided to found ReLogic, the first game they would develop, Terraria. Over the next few months, the company would gather a small team to work on the game, eventually releasing Terraria on Steam in May of that year. And the game was off to the races, selling 200,000 copies in a week and over 430,000 by that month, which is insane for an indie game that took around 5 months to publish. The game was obviously in its very early stages, not having nearly as many items, biomes, and bosses, and not nearly having as much polish as there is today. But that would begin to change. Instead of taking their bags of cash and moving on, ReLogic continued updating the game. By the end of the year, ReLogic had added some buff potions, a ton of new enemies, and a bunch of quality of life fixes to make the game more enjoyable. Coupled with that was Terraria's 1.1 update, which changed the very foundation of the game. Added in 1.1 was the Wall of Flesh, which when killed would put the world in hard mode, increasing the difficulty of the game with harder enemies and bosses. This pretty much set a precedent for the types of updates that would come in the future. Over the next 2 years, the dev team would continue to update the game, adding more items but nothing too major until update 1.2. And like 1.1, added an absurd amount of stuff into the game. Let me list them off quickly. Weapon modifiers, new enemy encounters, 2 new biomes, 100 new enemies, and over 1,000 new items. All for free. ReLogic wasn't content with ending it there though. When update 1.3 came, it added even more to the game. Over 800 new items, 250 new enemies, and a ton of quality of life changes. While most developers would have either left their games or turned any of these updates into paid DLC, ReLogic never did that, opting to go with the business strategy of making the best game they possibly could instead of milking their players for money. Now we skip 5 years later to version 1.4, which we call Journey's End. With what ReLogic would call Terraria's final update, they wanted to go out with a bang, adding new difficulties in the game, a ton of quality of life updates, and multiple new bosses for players to fight. That's it. That's the rundown of Terraria's development. Never added anything else into the game, and ReLogic rode off into the sunset to work on other projects. What am I kidding? They love the game too much to actually stop updating the game. Although the updates haven't been groundbreaking, they're still more than other games even attempt, some which include more quality of life updates, more items, and even another boss. And I think stuff like this pretty easily explains why Terraria's had so much success. Constantly, video game developers and studios will release broken games to the public for some quick cash, leaving them in a state of decay once they've collected their money. Instead of the norm, ReLogic continually dedicated themselves to make Terraria as good as possible, and that showed in the game's overall quality. Now, this is where I talk about the actual game, and how all the content added over the years made the game amazing. On the surface, it is kind of 2D Minecraft. You spawn in, chop down some trees, mine ore, and build a house to protect yourself against zombies. But as soon as you start digging deeper into the caverns and explore the other biomes in the world, the game differentiates itself from other survival games. You discover new weapons, items, armors, each having their own unique effects or abilities, ranging from guns to swords that summon stars from the sky. Along with that comes the NPCs that move in, having certain spawn requirements from things you'll find around the world. NPCs are essential to a playthrough, providing items and just making the world feel like there's more life in it instead of being a barren wasteland with only you in it. This also creates really good character progression as you go exploring. More exploration equals more things available to you, whether it's through NPCs or items you get. Eventually you'll hit a brick wall as there's things that you'll find across the world that you can't mine. That's where the bosses come in. First boss you'll typically fight is the Eye of Cthulhu, as it spawns under these 3 conditions. As you continue slaying bosses, you gain access to some really fun items, but more importantly, items need to progress. Eventually, you have nowhere to go but down, as you will usually hit the world barrier at the top and sides of the map. When you get down there, it's hell. Like, unironically, it's called the Outer World. This is where you fight the Wall of Flesh and get into Hard Mode. Hard Mode is where progression takes a massive step up. Sheer amount of items you can unlock and can make allows for crazy builds to be made. Want to build around boomerangs? Go for it. If you're like Doom Guy, build around shotguns. Maybe you want to kill a god with yo-yos? You can do that too. The point I'm trying to make is that you can play in any way possible. Also, while pre-hard mode could relatively be completed in any order, hard mode connects the bosses leading you to the end. Here's the path. Beat the 3 mechanical bosses, the Twins, the Destroyer, and Skeleton Prime. Once you do that, dive into the jungle and awaken an angry plant, kill Plantera, and take the temple key from it. Enter the jungle temple and slay the golem. Return to the surface and kill the lunatic cultists. Once that happens, destroy the 4 celestial pillars around the world and finally kill God. That's Terraria for you, but in all seriousness, Terraria is so expansive it would take hours to cover everything. You can play the game 1,000 times over and have a unique experience every time. That very limitlessness of the game, combined with the developer's dedication to the game, has created one of the most devout communities today. Over the years of the game's existence, Terraria's community has only gone stronger and grown, and no small part to the developer's commitment to quality. This commitment hasn't gone unnoticed though, as the community has continued to create unique things to show the community, and honestly just stood the test of time. While most older games wither away and their communities move on to other things, Terraria's community has stood the test of time and has been loyal to the game. And as much as I repeat myself, it really is due to ReLogic. The amount of polish they put into the game always gives people reason to not only buy the game, but to keep playing. Terraria even won Steam's Labor of Love award for ReLogic's dedication to the game. That says something. For a game that old to have that much influence and garner enough support to beat out the other contenders says a lot. That's the bottom line. A studio will be rewarded by the players they draw in if they follow these 3 things. Their game has to be fun. No one's going to play the game if it isn't engaging in some way. It needs to keep the player interested and wanting to keep playing. Second, the developers need to care about the game. A game can be as engaging as it wants, but if developers continually show that they don't care, the players will soon realize and begin to become apathetic to the game, as they will realize there's no bigger vision for the game. Like the previous point, if the game devs show that they care, the players will care because they'll be able to tell that they're important instead of being some bag of cash to be exploited. This is the formula for any successful game, and Terraria and ReLogic hit all 3. And that's why Terraria's been the success it is. That's why it's sold 44 million copies in its lifetime and continues to be bought. Maybe if you haven't played it, maybe you'll go out and buy the game and play for yourself. Hell, it's only $10, which is better than most games could say these days. But I honestly recommend the game so much. It's fun, massive, and just has so much love poured into its coding. The game has given me so many fun memories, and I hope it will for you too.